think about sound for a moment. I mean, really think from like the rumble of collapsing stars, right, all the way down to the tiniest whisper of a bird hatching.
Yeah, it's more than just noise, isn't it? It's like the universe talking
Mhm.
in vibrations.
Exactly, the universe's own tongue. And that's what we're getting into today, right? This whole deep dive.
Precisely. We're digging into the science of musical experience using music444.pdf as our guide. We'll cover the basics of sound, how our ears even work, overtones, scales, all the way to music and the brain, even the future.
Okay, so the mission basically is to give everyone a shortcut, understand the science behind the music you love, how sound waves turn into, well, feelings,
Yeah.
how we organize it all.
Yeah, connecting the physics to the subjective stuff. So where do we start with something so fundamental?
Good question. I guess with sound itself, the waves.
Makes sense. So sound travels in waves, yeah, like ripples on a pond.
Yep.
And these waves have frequency, how many cycles pass per second.
And that's pitch, right? Low frequency, low rumble, like tectonic plates.
Exactly. Or high frequency, high squeal. A bad.
Yeah.
The document even mentions gravitational waves, super low frequency, nanohertz stuff,
Yeah.
cosmic scale.
Wow. And then gamma rays at the other extreme, like
Yeah.
10 to the 20 hertz. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And Zoran's roar. Apparently it spans this huge range, subsonic rumbles to ear-splitting highs.
Okay, so frequency is pitch. What about amplitude? That's loudness.
Right. Amplitude is the energy, the intensity. Back to the pond,
Yeah.
small drop, small ripples, quiet sound, big boulder.
Big splash, big waves, loud sound. Got it.
So a whisper might be 30 decibels, conversation maybe 60, a rock concert 110, Zoran's roar, off the charts.
Huh.
Mills Instruments, apparently.
Yikes. Okay, so if frequency is like the speed of the vibration, amplitude is its size.
Pretty much, yeah. It's intensity.
So frequency, amplitude, what about wavelength? Is that the physical size of the wave?
It is. It's the distance between, say, two crests of the wave. And here's the key bit. There's an equation. Speed of sound equals frequency times wavelength, which means in a given medium where the speed is constant, frequency and wavelength are inversely related. One goes up, the other has to come down.
Like a seesaw. That makes sense. But the medium matters too, right? Air, water, stone.
Oh, absolutely critical. Sound needs particles to vibrate through. It's a mechanical wave. So the medium's density, elasticity, temperature, they all affect how fast sound travels. Much faster in water than air, for instance.
Which is why space is silent, right? No particles, no sound, unlike light waves.
Exactly. Electromagnetic waves don't need a medium. It raises that interesting question about Zoran's roar again. How different would it sound underwater versus on land?
Hard to even imagine. And back to the equation. If the speed changes in different media, that changes the frequency-wavelength relationship.
It does. If speed increases, say in water, then for a given frequency note, the wavelength must also increase to keep the equation balanced. Same pitch, different physical wavelength depending on what it's traveling through.
Fascinating. Okay, so that's the physics. But how do we actually pick this stuff up? Our ears seem pretty complicated.
They're marvels of engineering, really.
Yeah.
3 parts. Outer, middle, and inner ear. The outer ear, the bit you see, the pinna.
The cosmic horn, as the document calls it?
Yeah, it funnels sound into the ear canal. And that canal actually resonates, boosting frequencies important for speech, around 2 to 5 kilohertz. Plus, you've got earwax protecting everything.
Nature's little helper. Okay, so sound hits the eardrum, then the middle ear.
Correct. The eardrum vibrates, then those vibrations pass to the ossicles, the malleus, ingimicus, stapes, hammer, anvil, stirrup.
The smallest bones in the body.
Yep, and they act as a lever system, an amplifier. They concentrate the eardrum's vibration onto the much smaller oval window, the entrance to the inner ear, essential for hearing faint sounds.
And the eustachian tube, that's for pressure, right? Like on a plane.
Exactly. Equalizes pressure between the middle ear and the outside world, that popping feeling.
Right. Okay, so amplified vibrations reach the inner ear. This is where the translation happens. Vibration to brain signal.
This is it. The inner ear has the cochlea for hearing and the vestibular system for balance. We're focused on the cochlea, that snail-shaped, fluid-filled structure.
Looks like a maze in diagrams.
It kind of is. Inside it is the organ of Corti, and that contains the hair cells. Thousands of them. They're the crucial bit, converting mechanical vibrations in the fluid into electrical signals.
Hair cells. Okay, how do they do that conversion? Magic.
Close. It's physics and biology. Inside the cochlea is the basilar membrane. Think of it like a long, floppy ribbon that's stiffer at one end and looser at the other.
Okay.
Different parts of this membrane vibrate best at different frequencies. High frequencies vibrate the stiff base near the oval window. Low frequencies vibrate the floppy apex at the far end.
So it sorts the frequencies by location.
Types of hair cells do different jobs. Inner hair cells, mostly send the signal to the brain.
And the outer ones.
They're amazing. They act like tiny motors. They can actually change their length electromotility, which actively amplifies and sharpens the vibrations on the basal membrane. They fine-tune everything, helping us hear quiet sounds and distinguish similar frequencies.
Like built-in amplifiers and focus knobs. Incredible. So the inner hair cells send the electrical signals off. Where do they go next?
They travel along the auditory nerve, and importantly, this nerve keeps that frequency map, that tonotopic organization. Fibers from different parts of the cochlea stay grouped together.
So the map is preserved.
Yes. This organized signal travels up through the brainstem, gets relayed in the thalamus, and finally arrives at the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe.
And that's where we actually hear it, where it becomes sound as we know it.
That's where the interpretation happens, yes. The auditory cortex analyzes these signals, pitch, loudness, timing, and turns them into our conscious perception of sound. Music, speech, everything.
Okay, so physical vibration, electrical signal, brain interpretation. Let's talk about that interpretation. Pitch first. How do we know if something's high or low?
It comes back to that tonotopy. The brain knows which nerve fibers are firing, and because those fibers are mapped to specific locations on the basilar membrane, it knows which frequency caused the firing. Base of cochlea, high pitch, apex, a low pitch.
So it's all about location, location, location.
Pretty much. And there are specialized neurons in the auditory cortex tuned to specific frequencies too, refining it further.
And loudness. We said amplitude is the physical energy, but how do we perceive loudness?
It's mainly about how much neural activity is happening. A louder sound makes more hair cells fire. It makes them fire faster. More signals, faster signals. The brain interprets that as louder. There's also temporal summation. The brain integrates activity over short time windows.
Okay. Which brings us to decibels. That scale always seemed weird, logarithmic. Why not just linear?
Because our hearing itself isn't linear. We perceive changes in loudness more based on the ratio of intensities, not the absolute difference. A 10 dB increase is a 10-fold intensity increase, but we only hear it as roughly doubling in loudness.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense.
The formula, L equals 10, log 10, reflects that. It compresses the absolutely massive range of intensities our ears can handle, from a 0 dB whisper to a 140 plus dB jet engine or dragon roar, into a more manageable scale that matches our perception.
Right. Okay, so the ear does the mechanics, the brain interprets pitch and loudness, but then there's psychoacoustics. The brain doing even more interpretation. It's not just receiving signals.
Not at all. The brain is incredibly active. Take locating sounds. It uses tiny time differences when a sound hits one ear versus the other, the interoral time difference.
You okay? Yeah.
And tiny loudness differences, interoral level difference, that tells you left-right. And the shape of your outer ear, the pinna, creates subtle reflections that help you figure out up-down.
Clever. What about noisy places? Masking and the cocktail party effect.
Right. Masking is just when a loud sound drowns out a quieter one, especially if the loud one is lower in frequency. And the cocktail party effect, that's your brain's amazing ability to pick out one voice, one sound stream from a whole mess of noise.
How does it do that?
It uses cues, like pitch differences, timing differences, where the sounds are coming from. It groups related sounds together and filters out the rest. Auditory scene analysis, they call it.
Wow. And timbre, that color of sound. Violin versus trumpet on the same note.
Timbre is fascinating. It's mostly about the other frequencies present besides the main pitch, the overtones or harmonics.
Ah, right. We hear the main note, but there's other stuff happening too.
Exactly. Let's dive into that. Overtones and timbre. They're basically two sides of the same coin.
Okay. So how does that work? A vibrating string, for example.
Right. When a guitar string vibrates, it vibrates along its whole length. It gives you the fundamental frequency, the main pitch you hear. But it also vibrates in halves, thirds, quarters, simultaneously.
Like smaller waves riding on the main one?
Sort of. These shorter vibrating segments produce higher frequencies, the harmonics or overtones, and crucially, they're integer multiples of the fundamental. If the fundamental is 100 hertz, the harmonics are at 200 hertz, 300 hertz, 400 hertz, and so on, the overtone series.
A natural mathematical pattern in sound?
Exactly. And timbre is determined by the relative loudness, the amplitude of that fundamental tone compared to all its different harmonics.
So a flute and a trumpet playing the same note have the same fundamental frequency.
Correct, but they have different mixtures of harmonics. A flute might have a really strong fundamental and weaker harmonics, gives it that pure sound. A trumpet has a much richer mix, stronger, higher harmonics, making it sound bright and brassy.
That's the sonic fingerprint.
That's a great way to put it. Violin, voice, Zorin's roar. Each has its unique blend of harmonics defining its timbre.
And the instrument itself, the materials, the shape, affects those harmonics.
Absolutely. The wood of a violin, the bore shape of a trumpet, the metal of a cymbal, the tension of a drum head, even Zorin's scales, the document speculates. They all influence which frequencies resonate, which harmonics get amplified or dampened. It all shapes the final timbre.
It's amazing how much physics goes into just the sound of an instrument. Okay, building blocks established. How do we organize these sounds into music? Scales and modes.
Right. Scales are like the alphabet of music.
Yeah.
A selected set of notes within an octave that work well together. They provide the framework for melodies and harmonies.
The diatonic scale is the main one in Western music, with whole and half steps.
Yep, that specific pattern, whole, half, whole, half.
Right.
That pattern creates a strong sense of a home note, a tonal center.
And major versus minor scales. That's just a different starting point or pattern.
It's about where the half steps fall within that pattern, which changes the intervals relative to the starting note, the tonic. The major scale, WH, WH, WWH, sounds bright, often happy. That major third interval is key.
Right.
The natural minor scale, WH, WWH, WW, sounds sadder, more melancholic. It has a minor third interval from the tonic. Then you have variations like harmonic minor, raising the seventh note for drama, and melodic minor, raising the sixth and seventh going up for smoothness.
Okay. And modes. Are they just different flavors of the diatonic scale?
Pretty much. You take the same notes of a major scale but start on a different degree. Each starting point gives you a mode with a unique feel. Ionian is just the major scale. Dorian is minor-ish but distinct. Phrygian is minor with that lowered second, sounds kind of Spanish or exotic.
Lydian is major but dreamy. Mixolydian major but bluesy. Aeolian is natural minor.
Exactly. And Locrian is unstable, dissonant. Each mode offers a different palette for composers.
So scales and modes give us the notes. What about the distances between notes, intervals?
Right. An interval is just the pitch distance between two notes. We name it with the number second, third, fourth, fifth, etc., counting the scale steps and a quality.
Quality meaning major, minor, perfect.
Correct. Major intervals often sound brighter. Minor intervals sound darker. Perfect intervals, unisons, fourths, fifths, octaves, sound very pure and stable. Then you have augmented intervals, which are wider and tense, and diminished intervals, which are narrower and also tense.
Can you give an example?
Sure. C to E is a major third. Sounds bright. C to E flat is a minor third. Sounds darker. C to G is a perfect fifth. Very stable. C to G sharp is an augmented fifth tense. C to G flat is a diminished fifth, also tense, unstable.
Okay, so intervals describe the gaps. What happens when we play notes together? Harmony, chords.
Exactly. Harmony is combining notes simultaneously. The most basic combination is a chord, usually 3 or more notes.
Triads are the fundamental chords, root, third, fifth.
Yep. You build them by stacking thirds. Root plus major third plus perfect fifth, major triad, bright. Root plus minor third plus perfect fifth, minor triad, somber.
And there are others. Augmented, diminish.
Right. Major third plus augmented fifth, augmented triad, tense. Minor third plus diminished fifth, goes diminished triad, very unstable. And then you can stack more thirds on top to get seventh chords, ninth chords, adding complexity.
And voice leading. That's about moving smoothly between chords.
Yeah, trying to move the individual notes within the chords by small steps where possible, keeping common notes. It makes chord progression sound smoother, more connected.
And chords have functions, like jobs they do within a key.
The tonic chord, built on the first scale degree, feels like home, stable. The dominant chord, built on the fifth degree, feels tense, like it wants to resolve back to the tonic. The subdominant, built on the fourth degree, often leads nicely to the dominant. It creates a sense of journey and return.
Makes sense. Now, dissonance. You mentioned tense intervals and chords. Is that what dissonance is? The spice of music?
That's a great analogy. Dissonance is basically combinations of notes that sound unstable, rough, or clash, creating tension. It's the opposite of consonance, which sounds stable and pleasing.
Is there a physical reason for it, like the sound waves clashing?
Acoustically, yes. Dissonant intervals often have more complex frequency ratios between the notes, which can cause interference patterns or beating that we perceive as roughness. Perceptually, it's partly subjective and cultural, but generally our ears tend to prefer simpler frequency ratios.
Which intervals are usually considered dissonant?
Minor seconds, major sevenths, tritones, the augmented fourth diminished fifth interval are classic examples. But context matters a lot. An interval might sound dissonant in one situation and less so in another.
So it's not bad music, it's just tension.
Absolutely vital tension. Dissonance creates interest, forward momentum. It makes the eventual resolution to consonance feel satisfying. Composers use it deliberately delaying resolution, building dissonance, using unexpected clashes, chromaticism to create drama and emotion.
Okay, now all these intervals and chords depend on how the notes are tuned relative to each other. Tuning systems. Pythagorean, mean tone, equal temperament. Why so many?
It's a history of trying to solve an inherent mathematical problem. Pythagorean tuning focused on pure perfect fifths, a 3.2 frequency ratio. Sounds great for fifths, but the major thirds end up sounding pretty rough, and changing keys gets messy because of the Pythagorean comma.
A small tuning error that adds up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So mean tone temperament tried to fix the thirds, making them sound pure or very close to pure. But the trade-off was that the fifths were slightly off, and you'd get a horrible sounding wolf fifth in some keys, limiting modulation.
A no-win situation.
Pretty much, until equal temperament came along. This divides the octave into 12 mathematically equal semitones. The ratio between any two adjacent notes is always the same, the 12th root of 2.
So everything is slightly out of tune except the octave.
Essentially, yes, but it's consistently out of tune in every key. That compromise allows musicians to play in any key and modulate freely without hitting those awful wolf intervals. It unlocked huge harmonic possibilities. Bach's well-tempered clavier explored this potential.
And that's the system we mostly use now.
Overwhelmingly in Western music, yes.
What about A440, the standard pitch? Is that related?
That's the reference point. Tuning A above middle C to 440 Hz. It became an international standard in the 20th century for consistency. Before that, pitch varied quite a bit by region and time.
Are there alternatives people use, like A432?
There are. Some people prefer 432 Hz or other standards, sometimes claiming specific beneficial effects, though scientific backing is often limited. But 440 Hz is the practical standard for most musicians today.
Okay, tuning sorted. Let's talk about time. Rhythm and meter, the pulse of music.
Absolutely fundamental. Rhythm is how we organize sound in time. The basic pulse is the beat. The speed of that pulse is the tempo measured in beats per minute, BPM. Largo is slow, presto is fast, etc. It hugely impacts the feel.
And meter is grouping those beats. 2s, 3s, 4s.
Exactly. Meter organizes beats into regular patterns, creating a framework. Duple meter, 2 beats per measure. Triple meter, 3 beats like a waltz. Quadruple meter, 4 beats, common and pop. Within the measure, some beats feel stronger accents, especially the downbeat, the first beat.
But it's not always perfectly steady, is it? Syncopation, polyrhythms.
Right. Rhythms get interesting when they play against the steady meter. Syncopation accents the normally weak beats or offbeats, creating that catchy, off-kilter feel. Polyrhythms are even more complex, layering 2 or more different rhythmic patterns simultaneously, like 3 against 4. Creates incredible texture.
How do we even perceive this? Do we have an internal clock?
We do seem to have neural networks that act like an internal clock, helping us track the beat, anticipate patterns. It's influenced by attention, expectation, culture, and is deeply linked to movement and emotion. Why we tap our feet.
Okay, so rhythm provides the time structure. What about the actual sequence of notes? Melody, the part we hum.
Melody is that memorable line, yeah. A sequence of pitches with rhythm. It has a contour, a shape. Does it go up, down, stay level? Does it move by small steps, conjunct, or big leaps, disjunct?
And the intervals within the melody matter too. Small steps versus big leaps.
Definitely. Stepwise motion often sounds smooth, lyrical. Leaps sound more dramatic, energetic.
Yeah.
And using consonant versus dissonant intervals within the melody shapes its emotional feel stable and pleasing versus tense and yearning.
And the underlying scale or mode provides the notes for the melody.
Right. A melody in a major key will generally draw notes from the major scale, giving it a brighter feel. A minor key melody uses minor scale notes, sounding darker. Pentatonic scales, blues scales, different modes, they all offer unique melodic flavors.
How do melody and harmony interact? Does one lead the other?
It's a constant interplay. Sometimes the melody comes first and suggests the harmony. Sometimes the harmony is laid down and the melody fits over it, or even rises directly from the chords, like in jazz improv. They support and enrich each other, creating the musical narrative.
Okay, so we have notes, rhythm, melody, harmony. How is it all put together? The overall structure, musical form.
Form is the architecture, the blueprint, how musical ideas are presented, developed, repeated, contrasted over time. It gives the piece coherence.
What are some basic forms? Binary and ternary.
Yeah, those are fundamental. Binary is 2 sections, A-B, often repeated A-A-B-B. Common in dances. Ternary is 3 sections, A-B-A statement, contrast, return. Very balanced and satisfying.
And sonata form, that sounds more complex. Exposition, development, recapitulation.
It is. It became huge in the classical era. Exposition presents main themes, often in different keys. Development plays with those themes, takes them apart, travels through keys. Recapitulation brings the themes back, usually all in the home key. It's a dramatic structure.
Used in symphonies and concertos.
Often in the first movements, yes. Other forms include rondo, A-B-A-C-A, with a recurring theme, and theme and variations, where a main theme is repeated but altered each time.
And bigger structures like symphonies, concertos, operas use these smaller forms within them.
Exactly. A symphony typically has 4 movements, each often following a specific form. A concerto pits a soloist against the orchestra. An opera tells a story through music and singing. It's all built on principles of repetition for unity and contrast for interest.
Fascinating. Now, the document shifts focus a bit, looking at Eastern musical traditions. How do they differ from the Western focus on harmony we've been discussing?
It's often a very different emphasis. Many Eastern traditions prioritize melody and rhythm, and often have a deeper connection to spirituality. Harmony, as Western music knows it, complex chord progressions, is often less central.
So, different concepts of scales and modes, ragas and makwams.
Exactly. Indian ragas aren't just scales. They're melodic frameworks with specific moods, ornaments, rules for improvisation. Arabic makwams are modal systems too, but they often use microtones.
Microtones, intervals smaller than our semitones.
Yes, adding incredibly subtle expressive nuances to the melody. Ornamentation, trills, slides, complex vibrato is also often much more elaborate and central to the expression in many Eastern styles.
And rhythm, talas and ikat.
Highly complex rhythmic systems. Indian talas are intricate cycles of beats. Arabic ikat are rhythmic modes. Polyrhythms are common. And often, instead of complex chords, you'll find a drone, a sustained note, or simple chord providing a foundation for the melody, like the tempura in Indian music.
The case studies mention Indian, Arabic, Persian, Chinese, Japanese traditions, each unique.
Very much so. Hindustani versus Carnatic in India, the Aud and Ney in Arabic music, the Santur in Persian music, the Guiqin and Erhu in China, the Kodo and Shakuhachi in Japan. Incredibly rich and diverse sonic worlds.
And this has influenced Western music too. Debussy, jazz, rock.
Increasingly so, especially in the 20th century onwards. Composers like Debussy, Glass, Reich were influenced. Jazz musicians like Coltrane. Rock bands like the Beatles using the sitar. World music fusion. It's a constant exchange.
Okay, let's get to the heart of it. Music and emotion. Why does it affect us so powerfully? Any theories?
Loads of theories. Cognitivists say music represents emotions. We recognize them intellectually. Emotivists say music directly evokes emotions, causing physiological changes. Meyer's expectancy theory says emotions come from fulfilled or violated musical expectations.
Like being surprised by a chord change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or satisfied by a resolution. Then there's the brain's reward system music triggering dopamine, pleasure. And evolutionary theory suggests music helped with social bonding, communication, maybe even attracting mates. Probably a mix of all these.
How do the musical elements themselves contribute? Pitch, rhythm, harmony.
They all played a role. High pitch can be exciting, low pitch sad or serious. Fast tempo energetic, slow tempo calm or somber. Consonance peaceful, dissonance tense. Timbra has associations too. A trumpet might sound heroic, a cello introspective. Composers use these like emotional paint.
But it's not totally universal, is it? Culture must shape how we react.
Massively. We learn associations within our culture. A scale or rhythm might mean sad in one culture and something else entirely in another. Context matters hugely too. The same music at a funeral versus a wedding evokes different feelings.
And music therapy uses this connection.
Yes, it's a clinical field using music listening, playing to address emotional, cognitive, physical needs. Stress reduction, pain management, emotional expression. It leverages that deep music-emotion link.
But ultimately, it's subjective, right? My happy song might be your sad song.
Totally. Personal history, memories, mood. It all feeds into our individual experience. It's deeply personal.
Let's look inside the head. Music and the brain. What parts light up when we listen?
It's a whole network. Auditory cortex processes the basics. The limbic system handles emotion, amygdala, nucleus accumbens, pleasure center. Prefrontal cortex deals with structure, expectation, meaning. Even the cerebellum gets involved with timing and rhythm.
And the brain changes with musical experience. Plasticity.
Yes, especially musical training. It can increase gray matter, strengthen connections between areas involved in listening, playing, reading music. The brain adapts.
What about music and memory? Why are songs such powerful memory triggers?
Because music gets wired up with experiences via the hippocampus, memory formation, and the amygdala, emotion. Hearing a song again can reactivate that whole network, bringing back the memory and the associated feelings, often really vividly. Autobiographical memory.
And the music language link. Do they share brain space?
It's debated. Some overlap seems likely, maybe in processing syntax or structure. Areas like Broca's and Wernicke's might be involved in both. They might share cognitive resources like working memory. But you can also have brain damage affect one but not the other. Still lots to learn there.
And learning music actually helps brain development. Cognitive benefits.
Strong evidence for that. Musical training is linked to better memory, attention, language skills, even spatial reasoning and motor skills. It seems to be a great workout for the brain.
So why did music evolve at all?
Survival advantage. Several ideas. Sexual selection, musical skill as a fitness indicator, social bonding, coordinating groups, fostering cooperation, emotional communication before complex language, cognitive development, maybe practicing pattern recognition, useful for other things, likely a combination.
Okay, let's look ahead. The future of music. Technology's impact seems huge already.
Absolutely. Electronic instruments, synths, drum machines changed everything. Sound synthesis allows creating sounds from scratch, additive, subtractive, FM, endless possibilities.
And DAWs, digital audio workstations, that's changed production, right?
Completely. Powerful recording, editing, mixing software on a computer, virtual instruments emulating real ones. It's democratized music creation massively. Anyone can potentially make music now.
How about consumption? Streaming, algorithms.
Big shifts. Easy access to vast libraries via streaming. But algorithms can create filter bubbles, and new formats are emerging: interactive music, immersive experiences with VRR.
What about newer sound tech? Granular synthesis, spatial audio.
Granular synthesis breaks sound into tiny grains and reassembles them in new ways, amazing textures. Spatial audio goes beyond stereo, creating 3D sound fields, making you feel like you're inside the music. More immersive.
And the really sci-fi stuff. Biofeedback, brain-computer interfaces.
Early days, but intriguing. Using heart rate or brain waves to control music directly. BCIs, letting musicians compose or perform just by thinking. Radical possibilities for expression down the line.
And AI music. Tools like Suno generating music from prompts.
That's exploding right now. Huge potential for creativity, for people without traditional skills to make music, but also big questions. Copyright, ownership, impact on human musicians, potential for homogenization. It's a major disruption we're navigating.
Wow, we've covered so much. From sound waves vibrating our eardrums,
to the brain making sense of it all, organizing it into scales, rhythms, harmonies.
the diverse ways cultures make music, the deep connection to emotion and memory.
All the way to AI generating new tunes. It really shows how fundamental music is.
It really does. It's this universal language, isn't it? Connecting us, evoking feelings.
Absolutely. Across cultures, across time, it's deeply human.
And even after unpacking all the science, there's still something magical about it, isn't there? That feeling you get.
Definitely. The science explains the how, but maybe not entirely the why it affects us so deeply. There's always more to explore, more to feel.
The perfect place to end, I think. It really does invite you to keep listening, keep exploring your own deep dive into sound.